at minute to midnight, the scope of services is managed by an incumbent contractor, and at 1 minute past midnight, the responsibility of that passes to Network Plus. And on transfer, as you say, we oftentimes TUPE over a large number of colleagues that join the group. But as well as that, there's a whole host of other mobilisation activities that are very transferable to an acquisition. So, those colleagues that are joining us instantaneously, how do we get them onto our systems from an IT perspective? How do we make sure that they receive the required training in the required time frame to work with our health and safety policies and our RAMS policies? How do we make sure that those colleagues all get paid on a Friday when it's payday and integrate them into the payroll system, etc.?
Today on the RolyPoly, I'm your host, Dylan Harrocks from PMI Stack, and I'm joined by Ryan Imison, Head of M&A at Network Plus. Network Plus is a UK's leading utilities infrastructure contractor. Work with 11 of the 12 water companies in the country. They're the people keeping the water running, the lights on, and the roads moving. In this episode, we talk about what bolt-on acquisitions look like at a platform this size, how winning huge utility contracts give their team constant practice at integration, and the people challenges that come with buying a founder-led business. Let's get into it. Hello, Ryan. Welcome to the RolyPoly. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, Dylan. Thanks for having us.
So, Ryan, could you give us, in short, what is Network Plus and what's your role there?
So, Network Plus is the UK's leading utilities contractor, specifically focused on R&M type activities. We work extensively with nearly all of the major water utility companies, the vast majority of the power networks too, including the gas networks, and also across the strategic highways sector. I've been with the business for just coming up to 2 years now, focused principally on our M&A activity. So that includes the full deal life cycle, from what is our acquisition strategy through to sourcing and engaging targets, negotiation, due diligence, and some of the initial integration work.
Okay, so when a water main bursts on a motorway at 3 a.m, that's you guys fixing it.
Exactly. Yeah, we sort of have an unofficial mantra about keeping the roads moving, the lights on, the water flushing. It's the real essential infrastructure which powers the country. We're playing our role in keeping that moving day to day.
And how did you get into running the M&A? What was your background before that?
So I'm a chartered accountant by training, and followed a relatively well-trodden path, I would suggest, in terms of I joined Mazar, which is probably one of the 10 biggest accountancy firms in the UK, probably even larger than that on an international scale, a very, very international business. Joined straight out of school into their audit department, so was performing financial audits on businesses. Not long after I qualified as a chartered accountant, I moved into the world of deal advisory, so advising clients on performing acquisitions, both supporting the buyers of businesses and also helping people to sell their business. Was with Mazar for a number of years, which included in quite a lot of international M&A work. I then joined EY, one of the big four accounting firms, in their M&A department, and it was at EY that I really started to hone in on the infrastructure services sector. Got to know Network Plus through that relationship, and then there was an opportunity to go the other side of the table, if you will, and join them to lead their activity. It was at a time when Omas, who are our private equity investor, had been investing into the business for a couple of years at the point I joined, done some incredible work to really stabilise the platform, make some key hires, invest in IT, a lot of the kind of building blocks to get the business ready to go on an acquisition strategy. And have helped us to deliver 3 transactions in that time.
Okay, so you've done 3 transactions, and what's sort of the thesis behind them?
Yeah, I mean, each one has its own story. I guess when we started, a key rationale was about trying to build a third vertical at that time. So Network Plus's heritage, as I kind of alluded to in my intro, was principally in the water and power infrastructure verticals. When Omas invested into the business, there was a common agreed strategy to try and build out a third vertical, which at that time was strategic highways. It shares a lot of the common characteristics that we enjoy in water and power. And so it's through that lens really that we acquired AC Landscapes, our first acquisition. That's a vegetation contractor, but focused specifically in the strategic highways sector. They have a number of long-term frameworks with the National Highways Authority. The second acquisition we did, Littlewood, was of a similar vein. It had some work in the transport sector, but also it's a fencing and security perimeter business, which is a type of work for which the whole of the infrastructure and particularly utility sector has a high demand for at the minute. In short, there are some new regulations that are enforcing better physical security of assets of national infrastructure importance. So Littlewood provided that core competence that our clients wanted that we did not have to date. And then over that time frame, our acquisition strategy evolved somewhat. This was principally driven by the sectors we work in are highly regulated. They have regulatory cycles. And in the latest round of regulatory determinations, the level of activity and therefore the level of spend in our core markets of water and power has increased dramatically. And so actually now we're thinking more about penetrating those markets even further with some complementary services. So in my preamble, I noted that Network Plus is well known for repair and maintenance activities in particular. We're looking to see what more we can do with our clients now. Our clients are looking more and more for a trusted partner. And it's through that vein we acquired our third acquisition, Claret Civil Engineering, which is a wastewater focused contractor. Network Plus had a sizable wastewater presence already, but our experience was more focused on the clean water networks. Claret helped us to enhance that, and also projects that are a little bit longer in lifespan in terms of capital enhancement work. So you're a good example of going to a water burst and fixing it. This might be projects that a little bit longer in term in nature, a little bit more planned in nature.
Okay, I see. So it sounds like the strategy is complementary services. You've already got big clients that you're working with or big contracts. And
Yeah.
let's see, what other services you can attach to those contracts, and that's where you realize those synergies. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. As I say, we work. It's an interesting market insofar as there's a very specified number of potential customers. That actually, in terms of a number of customers, is quite a small number compared to other markets, I would suggest. So our strategy, both from an inorganic perspective and also how we look to grow our service capability organically, is really about, well, what more can we do for our clients? We really want to be a partner of choice. We want to be a partner that they ring in a time of need. So it's about having as many services and capabilities to support that as possible. And there's a number of really nice case studies we can look at with our clients as where we started with one service, and now we've built many. So some of our biggest water customers now, we have 8 to 10 contracts, all doing slightly different types of work to work across the value chain for them.
Okay, I see. So it's you want to add new services, you acquire complementary services. Why do you acquire instead of building out those services internally?
Yeah, so I mean, one, I guess, which is common to other people you speak to, I would assume is around speed. To go and let's take Clara for example, as a setup wastewater specialist, network enhancement specialist. It will take a lot of time to find the people to do that. People is at the core of Network Plus. We're selling the services and expertise of our workforce. To build that capability at scale would take a long time. So that's one point. Secondly, reputation is vitally important in our market. It's complicated work with health and safety requirements. acquiring somebody that has that reputation in the market in the specific subset they work in just adds instant credibility in whatever subsector of the market we're talking about that is. And also, look, as a private equity backed platform, we want to grow quickly. So linking all those together, acquisitions is a neat way to move into new markets.
Yeah, you definitely don't need to convince me. I just like to see the rationale of acquiring versus building up those skill sets internally. But could you walk me through then what happens after you close a deal? What does the integration actually look like at Network Plus?
Yeah, so I mean, the first point to note here is integration as a work stream starts long before the SPA is signed and monies are transferred. We're very much an acquirer that likes to work with the target management team, target shareholders to build out that plan. So I would say during the due diligence phase, we're spending as much time assessing, refining, honing the integration plan as possible. I say that as a precursor for on day one, everyone knows what the plan thereafter is. In terms of kind of macro ways we think about the integration, because we're usually acquiring new services or new capability, or certainly service and capability that have been done expertly by the target company that we're acquiring, we don't want to sort of meddle with the frontline operation as far as we can. For us to get conviction, it's the target we went to acquire. The operational delivery is excellent. It has been at the three companies I've mentioned so far, and indeed a couple of acquisitions that we did prior to the recent round of investment. All of those delivered operational excellence, so we leave that as alone as far as possible. Our integration, thesis or principle, if you like, is about can we support the frontline operation with our expert support services and back office functions that you'd expect to have in a business of our size. So, a lot of it is about taking away some of the necessary requirements of running and growing a business that perhaps the operators and founders don't want to do. So your classic examples here would be around finance, payroll, HR, insurance, those kind of things that we have individuals that are experts in those domains, and can we support the target with those kind of features. A second core element, which again, because we're typically acquiring new and complementary services and capabilities, is about the introduction and cross-fertilization of client relationships. So this works both ways. So there is usually a pretty extensive program around introducing the newly acquired target to existing Network Plus clients and relationships. Oftentimes these are clients and individual relationships that go back a long way. So there's quite a natural way to sit with the executives of our clients to say, hey, we've got this new capability. How could that help you in developing, maintaining, enhancing your own network? And similarly, the other way, targets we're acquiring will always have some degree of client relationship that either we don't have or it helps us to penetrate further. And we want to go to them and say, Claret was a really good example, a very strong relationship with Anglian Water. We're going to Anglian and saying, Claret have served you brilliantly for a long number of years, doing a certain type of service offering. Network Plus brings X, Y, and Z, and how could we look to support you with that? So they're kind of two of the key principles we look to apply.
Okay, nice. So you mentioned that the targets you're acquiring have exceptional operational capability. They're great at actually delivering the work. My question is, why do they sell to you, other than, of course, the money? What other sort of selling points do you have for joining you? And is there some sort of rollover equity set up in the deal structure?
Okay. So I think, again, it's situational, but there's a couple of common reasons which have come to mind on the deals we've done so far, and indeed other discussions we've had that we haven't transacted, but common rationale to think about sales to us. So one would probably be around succession. So this is both in terms of perhaps founders that are at a stage in their life and career where they're wanting to plan to leave the business, to either retire or pursue new opportunities or whatever that might be. And oftentimes these are companies that, have been a founder's life's work. It's a bit of a cliche to say it's their baby, but it is their baby. And they want to pass it on to an acquirer that has an excellent reputation that they know and can trust will will maintain the legacy and reputation of that business. I think to that end, we're a good home for these businesses. There's probably a second point around the succession as well. It's a bit more nuanced. That sometimes when people hear succession, I think they instantly think about retirement succession. Oftentimes, it can also be, well, I've taken the business as far as I want to, or I think I'm able to, or as far as this team is able to. And actually, with the benefit of a bigger business behind them, with the benefit of some of the central support functions I've just alluded to, it would allow us to take those steps that would be more difficult on our own. And again, Network Plus, has, I would argue, the market leading metrics in terms of ability to grow organically and to grow quickly. Join our group and we can help you on that journey. Again, and the third element would also be about, this is a sector where at a point in time, if you want to take that next step, there are certain size requirements, the thresholds to win new frameworks, to win new contracts. And for those individuals, those founders that have the ambition to do that, but it's just difficult to win those, being a standalone SME company, coming into the group opens up those options too.
I see. So there's naturally a bit of a ceiling there, just with the nature of the type of clients
Yeah,
you
they
work
can be,
with.
and founders can work through that themselves. But again, in the same way to the earlier question, I kind of referenced time and speed being a reason these deals are done. It can work the other way. A founder that might need to grow to 100 million turnover to qualify for a framework can do that instantly by joining our group. Your second question, second part of the question was kind of around rollover equity. I mean, as a starter for 10, I would say we're very flexible as acquirer in terms of our structures, our deal types, etc. So that's to say nothing's off the table as just kind of a first principles basis. Whether it's through equity or other instruments, what we always definitely try to do is to set up a structure that incentivizes and importantly rewards the founders and management teams of the target companies to grow further. And actually, we've had a real demonstrable success at growing the target companies once they come into our group, both in terms of the three acquisitions mentioned already and the ones we did earlier. We've grown all of those substantially since the acquisition.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned mobilization, and I had to do a bit of research after.
Yeah.
And what this means is that when you win a contract from a competitor, you end up inheriting their entire workforce, right? Overnight,
Yeah.
you'll have the workforce that was working on the Welsh water pipes.
Yeah.
You now have those 300 employees working
Yeah.
under Network Plus.
Yeah.
Does that experience of onboarding hundreds of people at once help when it comes to acquisitions and post-merger integration?
Yeah, definitely. So as a reference, Network Plus has an exceptional record of organic growth, which in this sector and in the work types we operate in, means winning large framework contracts that you allude to. Welsh Water is a great example of a recent one we've won. And, start overnight, meaning, at minute to midnight, the scope of services is managed by an incumbent contractor. And at 1 minute past midnight, the responsibility of that passes to Network Plus. And on transfer, as you say, we oftentimes TUPE over a large number of colleagues that join the group. But as well as that, there's a whole host of other mobilization activities that are very transferable to an acquisition. So, those colleagues that are joining us instantaneously, how do we get them onto our systems from an IT perspective? How do we make sure that they receive the required training in the required time frame to work with our health and safety policies and our RAMS policies? How do we make sure that those colleagues all get paid on a Friday when it's payday and integrate them into the payroll system, etc.? So the business has a very well embedded culture of onboarding new operations quickly and successfully that is actually quite transferable to an acquisition situation.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because you get a job from one company, then one day to another, you work at a different company. How is it for those people that have transfer jobs? Do they mind? Are they ever resistant to that change?
So, I mean, again, the process is similar to what other acquirers will do. We don't have the stupid dynamics in terms of it's about um, clear and frequent communications as a starter for 10. So whether I'm joining Network Plus because of a cheaper arrangement or whether I'm joining Network Plus because of an acquisition situation, we're very quick to give clear and honest communication about what that will mean in terms of maybe there are things that change. Brackets, we try to keep things as consistent as possible for people, save for when there are situations that we can offer more. But if there are some practical things that need to change, then we're also open with that and what that will mean to people. And also on the lines of communication, also ensuring that we have very forums for new colleagues to come and ask questions, because what will be important to Ryan is important to Dylan, is important to X, Y, and Z. So what that means in practice, for example, is with our acquisitions, we usually have a pretty structured program where, say, for the first 6 to 8 weeks, we have a very high level of visibility on site, practically from the senior management team at Network Plus. What that means very practically is 2 or 3 of the executive team will be down there, typically for a couple of days a week, with a clear diary. Can we commandeer your meeting room for 2 days? And it's just a drop-in session. Come and ask us whatever and whatever you want. Usually we'll find there's some themes of questions that come from that, and then we can ensure that's cascaded, more widely. I focus on communication in the answers to that, but that's a key way to make sure new colleagues joining the group, feel welcome, and it's a success bringing those on board. Again, invariably, I think we have a pretty good track record of doing so.
Yeah, great. There's a lot of sort of overlap there. I mean, even though this is only the fourth podcast episode, I will say every episode so far has been about people, talking, like every founder says the same thing, or every operator, it's people. If you can make the communication work both ways, to make the people happy, things will work out well. If that doesn't happen, it all goes to shit.
Yeah.
What's
I'll have to get that on the wall somewhere.
But what is the biggest sort of people challenge you faced when acquiring a company, especially when you're buying these founder-led companies? Is there any big horror stories you've had?
No horror stories. It looks for some wood to touch. I think maybe learning, and reference my background before, coming from a sort of professional services background, involved in a lot of deals, but usually from a deal and financing execution perspective. What perhaps I naively underestimated the importance of was some of the very, very practical considerations that are important to people. And I shouldn't have overlooked those, because they've been important to me when I've moved jobs or whatever. But things about, can you log on to the IT system properly on a Monday morning? Can you find where to go when you need support with something? Do I know who to call when I need support something? So, oftentimes we can spend a lot of time, rightly so, on the very big picture of strategic objectives and the goals, but actually what's making the business tick and drive day to day is a series of, probably hundreds of very practical considerations that, a lot of them continue absolutely smoothly, but just making sure you nail those practical points is one learning I would draw out.
And how can you do that? Is it through communication, or what are some practical ways to avoid that unease that you can sometimes have?
Yeah, I think communication is critical in that, including, I'm hesitating whether to say it's not. No matter how much you plan, something will go wrong. Hopefully, what goes wrong is a minor thing. But the important point, and why I'm drawing it out, is I think having an ability to react to that quickly and to sort it is important to people. So, the vast majority of people are understanding and willing people, and they probably realise if you're transferring an IT system from one company to another, I use that as an example, there could be some kinks and things that go wrong with that. But so long as you're communicating it throughout, and when something does slightly go off plan, you react to it and sort it quickly, I think that gets a lot of buy-in and trust from people. So being reactive and sorting issues as they come up, I think helps to iron out some of those kinks and is a good learning.
Yeah, that's good advice. Be reactive, be communicative. If things are going wrong, let them know. We know we're messing up here. We've made a mistake with this IT system or whatever, but we're working on it as quick as possible. It's not going to stay like this. Because I can imagine, things are changing. You start looking for reasons that the acquisition wasn't a good idea or why things are going worse. So expect there can always be some bad apples that can affect
Yeah,
that. We talk about this strategy as well of finding, like specifically in IT, finding people that are going to be the champions that love to learn
absolutely.
new systems and so on, and then getting
Absolutely.
them to be the ones that train their colleagues instead of everything coming top down, getting
Yeah.
people within the company to spread the excitement for the new tech.
But yeah, fully agreed. And yeah, I referenced earlier that we'll build the integration plan extensively with the shareholders and management team of the targets pre-acquisition.
Mm.
But very commonly that group of individuals you're speaking to is quite a small set. It's it's executive board, it's the SLT, it's the shareholders of the company. So a small number of people, and getting their buy-in is super helpful. And I think in all of the processes we've done so far, we've had their absolute buy-in by the point of acquisition. But then it's about making sure the rest of the workforce and colleagues feel the same too, and that's about giving them a forum to feedback, to iterate, to suggest things. And actually, some of the greatest successes we've had in terms of fixing some of the kinks and bugs that come out of an integration have come um, from people feeding into it and perhaps giving suggestions and giving very practical, to my earlier point, very practical considerations that unless you're using the supply chain ordering system every day, you wouldn't have thought about that. So that's another call out in terms of the communication.
And another question here, Network Plus is P backed.
Hmm.
How does the ownership cycle affect how you approach M&A? Because from my understanding from our last call, you're coming towards the end of the current cycle of your current investors. How does that affect the sort of strategy of what acquisitions you're going for, maybe the pace, the size of the deals, the
Yeah.
appetite? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the very short answer is it doesn't change it particularly. Omas have been a very supportive investor to back the management team's strategy, both from an overall Network Plus strategy perspective and how the acquisition strategy feeds into that. And when the time comes for a new round of private equity ownership, it will be a continuation and evolution of that strategy. So from that perspective, it's continuing to execute on the agreed strategy. And also, as the Network Plus ownership evolves over time, we can't just press pause on our acquisition efforts. The reality is our market, as for many different types of markets in the UK at the minute, is a competitive field for acquisitions, both from other private equity backed platforms, from private equity companies themselves looking for a platform investment, through to the new forms of buyers that we have in terms of long-term holds, in terms of search funds, etc. So if we were just to press pause on our acquisition activity for whatever reason that may be, it would be to the detriment of the long-term success of the group. So, from that perspective, we will continue as per normal.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you think that when you have a new PE investor that they would, like, the strategy would stay the same, or typically do they revisit the M&A strategy and either push it harder or softer?
Well, look, every investor will have their own lens and things, as I
Mm.
suspect, and perhaps specific areas that they want to push or take from slightly compared to other investors. But ultimately, it goes back to that point that, in my experience, private equity investors are typically looking to back a management plan for sure to support it and to challenge it as appropriate. But the guiding principles of it and the overall direction needs to be driven by the team that are in the business. So, I wouldn't expect wholesale change. I'll use it. It'll be evolution, not revolution. I would suspect from that perspective.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned before that you invested a lot of you invested a lot in technology and improving the foundational blocks.
Yes.
Is AI involved in that investment?
Yes, it is. I mean, you know, like I'm sure others you spoke to, and many other businesses, we've got a long way to go, and it's a evolving landscape daily, isn't it? By the sounds of things, but I think Network Plus is very well positioned, and we're already doing some really interesting, impactful things with AI. We've done a lot of work under the owners investment cycle around our data. Having a consistent level of data that's captured in a systematic and robust way that is now allowing us to do some really cool things with AI in terms of analyzing cost trends, analyzing performance trends of operational delivery. So we've done a lot of the building blocks, I would say, to get the benefits of AI. We're starting to see some of it, and it'll be really interesting to see how that evolves going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to feel like you're on top of AI because, like you say, every day, every week, there's a new amazing technology that comes out, and you feel like you're left behind. I'm guilty of spending too much time on the weekends focusing
Yeah,
on learning this
looking
new
at it.
AI system. Yeah, and I have a couple of quick questions here as well I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest mistake you've seen or made when it comes to integrating acquired businesses?
I would say here it's less a specific action, but more one takeaway has actually been about getting the cadence of integration activities is right in terms of the timing of it. So what I mean by that is there's probably been certain things that we've you know delivered too quickly in some circumstances, but more often that it's actually about, well, people are excited to be part of Network Plus Group, and actually can we get on and enact some of that change? So there's a fine balance, the Goldilocks thing, right? Of not too fast, not too slow. But I think not being scared to get on and to enact the positive change is one learning that we'll look to take forward.
Okay, I see. And how can, if other people are listening, also maybe facing that problem of cadence, how can they figure that out? Is it, yeah, how can they figure out a good cadence to do? Is it from experience, and you're just probably going to mess it up the first few times and just get better, or is there a way that you can avoid?
I think also it's about dedication, time dedication to the matter. Often people involved in integration process are doing it alongside busy day jobs and other commitments, and to enact things quickly requires a certain level of focus and just time commitment that is hard to do as a balancing priority. So ensuring that it's not to take everyone out of the day to day. That clearly would be to the wider detriment of business. But having enough of the people involved focus enough of the time to deliver quickly was probably one learning there.
I think that's a great tip. Just giving it enough time, giving it enough thought, dedicating enough time to do it properly. And you don't want to rip the band-aid off and piss off a lot of people. You want to make
Yeah,
sure that you, the team, can dedicate enough time to get it done properly. I think that's a
yeah.
great learning.
And, and perhaps linked to that, it's being open and conscious of other commitments. There will be a whole host of other things going on, both at target and acquirer side, as well as the integration in terms of day-to-day activities. So, I'm thinking here practically in our world, well, what are the other big bid activities in terms of new contract bidding going on at a similar time? And actually, can we work out a overall timetable that ensures we're giving enough focus to both that activity and the integration activity? What about recruitment that's going on at the same time? And there's certain people we need to get in place before we can do certain critical paths of the integration program. Very practically, what's going on with people's holidays, particularly in terms of very immediate actions post completion. It's a long stretch for target management to go through a due diligence process, and they probably deserve a good break after that. And let's make sure we factor that into, in particular, the first 100-day type activities. So, yeah, it's all around time commitment and make sure that's all properly thought through and planned out.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Good tip. And if someone listening is considering doing a buy and build play for the first time, what's one piece of advice you'd give them that maybe they haven't heard before?
Oh, whether they've not heard it before or not, I don't know. But I think being very deliberate in what you're trying to do is important. there's lots of acquisition opportunities out there in a whole number of sectors, and even if you know the sector you're in and what type of works you're doing, there's lots of different ways you could take that. What we've explored a little bit on this call, well, is it a continuation of existing capability? Is it new capability in existing markets? Is it new services, new markets? And unless you have a pretty clear focus on what you're doing, one, you'll be running around like a headless chicken and don't know where to focus your time. And B, it's going to make it very hard for you to assess the acquisition opportunities that come and then to make a success of them. So having a deliberate strategy and executing on that is probably one area of guidance I would give people. That might sound relatively obvious and straightforward, but I think often when you speak to people who are thinking about this, people who have actually gone and done it, that's one where the end goal is perhaps a little bit too vague and unfocused.
Okay. Yeah. So have a focus, be deliberate, do things with intention. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The last question I have for you is anyone you think is doing interesting work in M&A or buy and build right now, someone you'd want to hear from on a podcast like this?
Oh, great question. The guys, I'll have to drop the message after this at RSK, I think is quite interesting. They're, an acquisition machine. I'd love to be able to quote the numbers that they've done, but it's too big for my simple brain to compute. But, lots of different types of businesses that are being brought into that group at different sizes, different geographies. But actually, when I've spoke to the guys there, actually they do have, to my earlier answer, some very clear strategic objectives of what they're trying to do and when and where. How they bring all that together, I think, is really, credit to them. It's an incredible journey they're on. So it'd be good to hear about their story to get to where they've got to now, and also where they're going, because I know they've got no intention of stopping anytime soon.
Okay, great. I have come across them before, so I will definitely be reaching out and seeing if they'd love to join the RolyPoly.
Yep.
But Ryan, thank you so much for this episode. Super interesting. Loads of insights in here. And thank you for being one of our first guests as well, while I figure all of this podcasting stuff out.
No, thank you for having me. And look forward to the other episodes.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good man. Bye-bye.